Welcome to The Right Atmosphere, podcast for writers, brought to you by Atmosphere Press, the only publisher that puts rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. I'm your host, Hayla Alawi. On this episode, we're going to be talking about how to write from personal truths while preserving narrative interest with our guest, Rhea Thomas. Rhea lives in Austin, Texas, where she works as a program manager in the digital media world. Her short stories have been published in multiple publications, including most recently The Fictional Cafe, Toasted Cheese, and Does It Have Pockets? She spends her free time hoarding books, walking her stubborn Labrador retriever, playing games with her sons, kayaking and swimming in rivers, searching for mysteries, and writing short stories that explore magical moments in the mundane. Her first book, a collection of short stories, is due out this August, and she's currently working on a literary mystery novel. You can find her online at rheathomasauthor.com. Thank you so much for joining me, Rhea.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I myself am, most drawn to writing memoiric pieces. And of course, you are a fiction writer. So we're kind of coming at this from two different angles. But all of that is to say, I feel this constant tension between telling the truth and telling something interesting. So I'm excited to pick your brain on this topic. First, I think it would be helpful if you could just lay out your writing process for us. And specifically, can you tell us where and how you elevate a personal truth into something that would be narratively interesting?
Sure. I will do my best to explain this. I um, I usually start, so I focus on short stories. That's more my medium. I'm writing a novel for the first time, which is a whole nother story, a whole new experience. But with short stories, what I do is I start with like a feeling or a moment that's real to me. The very first story that I wrote in this collection was I was under a lot of stress at work, and I work in digital marketing, so my first short story was set in a digital marketing agency where a woman is like overworked and stressed to the max. And I took that feeling that most of us get at some point or another in an office, and I exaggerated it, a little bit
Mm,
more than it needed to be just to get the point across and just to make it more frustrating so that the reader really got that sense. And then I made up clients. Like I made up a bunch of stuff, obviously, because it's fiction. But I took that feeling and this woman who suddenly starts walking to get rid of her stress. And she's walking her stress out. And eventually it sort of exits her body and manifests itself as this really strange looking chicken that like erupts out of the sidewalk. And so it's a
naturally.
little odd, but that was the way that I made it more interesting because honestly, does someone want to read about someone who's under a lot of stress and that could get boring and weird. So I kind of wanted to have that moment of release and just throw in that little dash of magic to make it kind of more interesting. So took a boring subject and just kind of did my own thing with it. Um, I think that it's really important to have truth in your writing, and however that may be a certain character or a certain setting or something, because it gives us something just sort of real and tangible that we can relate to. And I think that's important that your readers can relate to you on some level, even if you're writing about something they don't know or a feeling they don't experience or, that kind of thing. Um, Having that bit of authenticity, I think helps connect with the readers. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I really liked that detail about exaggerating that you mentioned too. I mean, I think that's where it comes from, right? That exaggerating is how you expand this moment, but you are still preserving the core truth of what, the feeling, the emotion, the idea that you're exploring. So, I can imagine this can be kind of um, difficult emotionally as a writer. Do you have any like strategies for taking care of yourself during that process?
Ha. Well, actually, the writing itself is actually really helpful in getting out any feelings I'm having. I've discovered that when I'm writing stuff down, I feel more connected with myself, and I feel like I am releasing a certain amount of that stress and kind of getting it out and putting it on page. Um, but I do a technique that really works for me, and the big surprise is walking, just getting out and
Mm,
walking and just being in nature and stuff like that really, really helps. But um, I think all my short stories start with some sort of something authentic, whether it be a feeling or a situation or a certain person or something like that, that I do take and I do try to exaggerate, and then just, throw in some magic to make it more interesting, which I know not everybody does. But it's what works for me. It makes it more interesting for me to share my situations.
right.
I have another short story where I started also in digital marketing world, big surprise. And it's an intern's perspective, because each story has a different perspective from a account manager to CEO to someone else. And this is the intern, and she's dealing with a difficult situation, like kind of office bullying, which I never really experienced, or I haven't experienced as a worker, but I've had situations where I'm like, oh, can't believe that person did that, kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, I can exaggerate this feeling, a feeling I'm sure most people have had, of feeling like someone's trying to one up you or doing something like that. And I gave her this stressful situation, but I threw in a magical sort of revenge form that appears on her computer that she can fill out and get this sort of unknown revenge on someone who's harassing her in the office. So that was kind of a fun way to deal with um, the situation that is very frustrating in real life if you're experiencing it. But again, I just exaggerated it and, and sort of went with it and had fun.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I mean, as you said, writing can be a release, and I know everyone has had that experience of just fantasizing about what you wish you could do if not
Right.
for social norms, that kind of thing. So, as part of that, is there ever a moment that you find you've kind of taken it too far and you have to rein it back in? Or does that, are you always pushing yourself to go farther in exaggeration and as you're approaching these stories?
No, and that's a really good point, because I do sometimes, I feel like, take it a little too far. And sometimes I just don't know if I have or not, And so I
Right.
actually belong to a couple of writing groups, which has been sort of invaluable for me, to get early feedback on what I've written. And oh my gosh, have I jumped the shark? Have I, is this too far? Most of the time, it's okay. Every now and then people are like, whoa, what have you done here? Um, There've definitely been times where I've taken an emotion or a feeling or situation that's very personal to me and tried to go with it and write it out. And I think it makes for some strong writing. But then sometimes I feel like, well, maybe this is too close, or
Mm,
this could affect someone else who reads it. And so then I feel like maybe I should change up some of the details a little bit, just to give myself that little bit of distance from the strong feelings, and also to sort of mask it so that it's not super obvious that I'm writing about an ex, or something like that. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I think that answered the question.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I mentioned earlier, you're writing fiction. I tend to write nonfiction, and obviously writers come from all kind of corners of those traditions. But that core question of is this too close? Is this going to hurt
Yeah,
someone is clearly something that no matter the genre, all of us are kind of grappling with. So I think that's part of why this is so important to think about, how am I creating or writing something interesting, but still, getting at that core truth of it all. So
yes,
I think that was an interesting thing to note. Although we are different writers, we have these kind of
right.
similarities that come up.
Well, it's definitely a tricky balance. I mean, you do want to have that authenticity, that, true
Right.
feeling or connection, but you also don't want to offend or, make it too raw, that sort of thing. I do know, and I have several friends who are memoirists, and I'm always very impressed with how they do it. But that it can be really painful writing about some of the things they write about. But almost without fail, every single one of them has been like, it was so worth it. It helped me get to a next level
Mm,
of dealing with feelings or situations. And I really admire that kind of writing and getting into that because I think that is challenging and you do want to make it interesting, but also keep to your truths. So
right. And I
I
think,
respect that.
readers can tell if you're not, if you're not being authentic, especially if I think that's what an extra challenge of fiction is, if you're not pulling from those interior, morals, truths, whatever it might be, readers can really tell. So it's important to, infuse your writing that way, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I actually, so I'm in a book club and we read a book recently that I'm not going to list names or, do anything like that, but it took a very public figure in the past and it showed some experiences that she had that I didn't
Mm,
know about that I thought was really fascinating reading material and it felt very, very authentic. But then there were moments where things happened like a plane crash that you're like, wow, did that really happen? And a few other things. And when I
mm.
finished the book and was reading at the back about acknowledgments and that sort of stuff, it turns out the author did take a fair amount of creative license with some of these situations.
Ah,
And I actually found myself really frustrated. Like I was kind of disappointed
mm,
because I expected it to be more real. And I know that there's that balance with fiction and nonfiction that you're taking a historical figure. They did do all these amazing things but let's add in a few extras. And it just felt like too much to me. And I kind of lost my faith
yeah,
in that situation, in that writer, in that
exactly.
story, because so much of it was manufactured. And I'm like, oh, well, I know it was fiction, but that's kind of disappointing. You expect a certain amount of, realness.
Yeah, it can feel like as a reader that the writer is trying to pull a fast one on you, and that's not a feeling you want to leave a book
Right.
with. So that's
Right.
almost like a cautionary tale,
Right.
perhaps for
Right.
writers.
It's unusual. I haven't had that experience before, so it's different.
That is good, at least.
Yeah.
Before we say goodbye to our guest, I'm happy to say that this episode is brought to you by Atmosphere Press, the only publisher that puts rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. Founded in 2015 by an author and PhD in literature and devoted to serving authors through editorial, design, publication, and promotion, Atmosphere has sold tens of thousands of copies of their authors' books across 6 continents. Visit atmospherepress.com to sign up for Atmosphere's newsletter, The Launchpad, and to learn about submission opportunities, event news, and free book, publicity, and writing residency giveaways. Well, Rhea, where should our listeners go to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Well, I post a lot on Facebook and Instagram. But you can find all those handles and everything on my website, which is rheathomasauthor.com. And so that's probably the best place to start to find things.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll direct people that way. But for now, thank you so much again. And thanks to all the listeners for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Right Atmosphere, the Advice for Writers podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave a review and share this podcast with the writers in your life. And if you're ready to take the next step in your publication journey, visit atmospherepress.com to submit your manuscript for publication consideration or to learn more about writing and what it is that we do. I'm Hala. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.